Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva.
and this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder.
And lists.
And we're brought to you by the. No, we're not. I'm so used to saying that.
Oh.
I should say that, by the way. We're not on Podmoth anymore.
Oh.
But you guys can still support their podcasts. Shout out to Addicted to Crime.
Mm-hmm.
She's a homie. She has really cool content. Actually, when I've listened to her podcast, I'm like, I vibe with this person. So there's a lot of really great podcasts on there. We just decided it was time to go out on our own. And so that's what we did. But please continue to give love to all of the other podcasts because they're all hardworking, really good podcasts. So there it is.
Yeah.
I guess that's how we make the announcement. Is I accidentally almost say we're still on there.
Perfect.
Yeah. So if you do want to get more involved with us, you can join us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/twisted listers. You can check out our TikTok. It's at Twisted Listers. You can join us on Instagram at
Twisted Listeners PCast.
I'm leaving in that pause. If you like to send us an email with case suggestions, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod@gmail.com.
If you would like to check out our website, which has two types of stickers on it, you can do that at
Two types of stickers. Twistedlisterspod.com.
Yeah, and I just wanted to really quickly, before we get into part 2 of recently found out serial killers, I just want to say how fucking angry I am that Adnan Syed's murder conviction was borderline illegally reinstated. So
yeah, it's really frustrating.
It's
and
extremely
stupid.
frustrating.
Hopefully it's just a little like hiccup and we'll go back to the way it was because it's really fucking frustrating. It's all just like logistical, like bureaucratic, like dumb shit.
Yeah, I listened to Robia. Robia? I always call her Robia. Rabia. I don't know why I always call her Robia. It's because there's this actress that was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and her name was Robia, and so I always say that. But Rabia Chowdhury, I listened to her live talking about it this morning, and it doesn't really sound like there's much of, I mean, I don't want to draw conclusions that aren't fair to draw, but it sounds like it's not so much about whether or not he's going to go back to prison, because he's not. It's more about whether or not they want to fight the overturning, because it sets a really scary precedent about victims' families basically being able to call for exonerated people to be charged and convicted of murder again, just because they didn't have enough time to go to the courtroom to see the hearing take place. So what she was talking about is like, that's a really scary precedent, because it just basically means like victims' families who are still angry or don't believe the person is innocent can kind of fuck with them even once they've been released for good reason. So I don't know what they're going to do, but he is not back in prison. He's at work and he's doing his thing. So
okay, that's good.
Yeah, I caught it at 7 a.m. I happened to be up and I saw the live start and I was like, doing it. So I'm glad.
I know. Sometimes I wake up to my true crime news bulletin from Cindy. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I sent it to you. Okay. But anyway, fuck all that. I feel terrible for the family, but also like there's a point at which you have to understand that you're barking up the wrong tree. And kind of it. So anyway, this is part 2 of serial killers recently discovered. And I went first last time. You're going to go first this time.
I am. And
excited.
I am. I know it's really horrible. I'm not. Don't put it that way. I'm not excited. I'm. That makes me sound like a bloodthirsty ghoul. But in fact, this is just like. I guess I do get a little excited to share the trauma that I've now put onto my brain. So we get to be there together.
We're all here for true crime because we enjoy listening to true crime, and it's not because we enjoy people being harmed or murders happening, but it scratches an itch, and we can all collectively admit to that. This is a safe space. So
this is just one of the most insane things. Top 10, top 5 that I've ever talked about.
Oh God. Okay. Well, I'm ready.
This is Andrés Mendoza.
Oh God.
We're going to Mexico.
Yeah.
Do you know this one?
I only know it because I researched it for like 5 seconds when I was considering doing it. And then I was like, fuck to the no. And of course, now you're doing it. Of course.
Of course I am. Yeah. This Andrés, this happened in 2021. Andrés Mendoza was a 72-year-old at the time former butcher. Okay. Silent pause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who lived in the Lomas de San Miguel neighborhood in the neighborhood of Atizapan de Zaragoza, which is outside of Mexico City. I've seen it described as a slum, quote unquote, but I'm not sure how legit that is.
Okay.
He was known to act inappropriately towards women in the neighborhood. He was frequently drunk. He was reportedly also addicted to pornography. So all around pretty cool.
Yeah, good guy.
He was also into politics, which tracks.
Yes, it does.
He became president of the Neighborhood Citizen Participation Council and worked for the campaign of another local politician. So that's also what he's into.
Because he likes the power.
Power, yeah. On May 15th, 2021, he was arrested shortly thereafter confessed to 5 murders. And I'm just going to say right now, that is not the total tally. That is a portion. And this included the murder of 34-year-old Reina Gonzalez, which is what got him caught. So I'm going to talk about Reina's case for just a second.
Okay.
And that's going to lead into the big discovery here.
Okay.
So Reina was a mother to 2 daughters, ages 4 and 8, and she was the wife of a cop named Bruno Portillo.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, which I'm sure had no doubt is why this shit was investigated very promptly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is where bro fucked up.
Wrong victim, yes.
Yeah.
She ran a small cell phone repair business, and she knew Andrés because he had her fix several phones in the past. And this was kind of how he got her to trust him, kind of establishing a rapport.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her husband also gave him some financial support because he was elderly. So this is extra rude because they actually were just helping him out sometimes.
Oh, so he was elderly when this happened.
He was 72.
Oh, shit.
At this time, in 2021, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so they were giving him money and kind of just giving money to an older guy, and being nice, and this is how they get repaid.
Wow.
So Reina told her husband Bruno that she was going to see Andrés to buy some cell phone parts for her business, and she just doesn't come home. Oh. So her husband Bruno, being a cop, launches an investigation basically himself and goes over to Andrés Mendoza's house. Andrés is like, hey, you can't come. He opens the door with a little peek, and it's like, hey, what's up? You can't come in.
Come in.
And Bruno's like, that's fucking suspicious. Fuck you. So he goes to the, station and officially reports her missing.
Mm-hmm.
Then he gets his cop friends and goes back to Andres's house. When they get there, they just bust in like, hey, well, fucking let us in.
Right.
And he and the officers discover a kind of makeshift homemade basement that's been dug out. So it's all just dirt.
Don't love that.
Mm-hmm. It's all that's a setting. And they have to kind of drill into the floor to access it.
So it's dug in and then covered?
Yeah, correct.
Oh God.
There they find a table that is, quote, saturated with blood.
Unquote. Oh.
And it is covered with his wife's body parts.
Oh my God, Diva.
And her decapitated body.
Fuck, dude.
She had been stabbed by Andrés the day before, and they actually caught him mid-dismemberment. That's what he was kind of in the process of packing up her various body parts into some different bags.
Holy shit, dude.
Yes. There's I'd say 8 to 9 really insane details still to come. And here's another one.
Oh, great. Thanks for the warning.
Yeah. So they found a ton of bloody knives and machetes, and an actual cannibal cooking setup in progress.
What the fuck?
A plate with human meat cooked on it that was partially eaten, along with a tortilla.
No.
And a cup of blood to go with it.
A cup of... Dude, that will make you fucking sick. Not that I'm thinking about this in practical matters, but were I to think about this practically, you can't just drink blood. What the fuck?
Yes.
Holy shit.
you don't know, Mexicans, we eat a lot of meals with a tortilla on the side, kind of like, to sop up the sauce and like pick up the meat with it. So it's kind of like a utensil.
Yeah.
So
oh my God.
Just having a tortilla on the side of his tortilla. Yeah. Human meat. Okay.
Oh my God.
So okay. So they also find surveillance footage in the neighborhood that showed Reina entering Mendoza's home the day before and obviously did not show her leaving. So that's just another piece of evidence that they don't really need, but they have it.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like all that stuff you don't really have to.
Superfluous.
Yeah. Yes. It's like a little, yeah.
Just to add it. The crime scene is a trash-filled, disgusting house, and it's a house of horrors. In that makeshift basement, a long archaeological dig, which I'll describe later a bit more, is going to follow, in which they dig up 4,300 bone fragments.
Oh my God, dude.
From at least 19 different victims.
Wow.
These fragments include several entire skulls sitting around, and the bones of at least one man and one child.
Oh, that's fucked up. So,
and yeah.
Wow, they had to actually go through all of those fragments to figure out who they belong to and how many people, which is like just.
I believe that process is still in progress.
Oh my God.
Yes. And
that's why you said just, at least.
At least. And that's just from that basement. They believe there's other locations where he buried people, including under the concrete floor and other spots on the property. And this excavation is still in progress, like I said.
Holy shit. So we're talking like, oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. There's photos and videos of the searchers jackhammering this like weird dirt basement. They're also deploying dogs, forensic archaeologists, like this whole team of different experts to find the bones and match them up to different people.
So, I mean, we could be in the 60s. We could be higher than that.
It's thought that he killed at least 30 women based off all the evidence, which I'll go into.
Okay.
That's like the minimum, but 19 that they found there.
Okay.
Yeah. They also find a bunch of their cell phones, jewelry, IDs, and other belongings. There's a photo of some of these goods laid out on like a table, and it is a lot of stuff. And just like little trinkets of theirs, nail polish, like hairbrushes, like everything of theirs he kept like a trophy.
Ugh, that's so disgusting.
Yeah. Among these items, they find the voter registration cards of Ruby Cela Castillo, who was 32, who went missing in summer 2019. She was a single mother of one who had been working as an Uber Eats driver. So she probably delivered him food, right? And Flor Vizcaino Mejia, who was 28, who went missing in 2016.
Oh, wow. So this is like a long... Also, he was pretty old doing this shit, too.
Yep. She was a single mother of 2 children who worked as a hostess. A lot of these women are going to work in bars, and I'll get to that in a second. That's going to be a trend. They also found a notebook with a list of 29 women's names.
Okay, so...
Which I think that's where they're getting 30, perhaps.
30 from, yeah, that makes sense.
It's between the list and the stuff, and so they're matching that up as well, not just the bones.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay, all right. Are you ready, Cindy? Because this is the worst thing you're ever going to hear in your whole life.
Yeah. Considering I've already heard, I'm not excited right now. I gotta tell you.
I'm doing a little, that was my siren indicating that this is going to be one. You can fast forward a minute, or you're going to hear the worst thing you ever heard in your life. Okay. So horrifyingly, investigators also find a lot of videotapes.
Oh, no, I don't want to know. Oh, God.
Both on 8mm film and VHS.
No.
Showing him committing some of the murders.
No.
And here's the sentence I gotta say. According to authorities, authorities, mind you, it's not a rumor. These videos show Andrés Mendoza peeling off the faces and scalps of his victims.
What? Oh my God. Please tell me that they're not alive when he's doing this.
I do not know. It did not say either way.
God damn.
There's also videos of him eating various body parts.
What?
Yes.
The fuck?
Yes. And in his confession, which I'll describe more now, Andrés admitted to removing the skin, and said, quote, "I removed the skin from her face because she was very pretty," end quote.
That does not make sense. Like, that's a sentence, that's words, but when you really think about it,
that is a serial killer sentence, if I ever heard one.
Yes.
He fully admitted to the cannibalism. He's like, yeah, I definitely ate him.
I mean, how could he deny it? He got caught mid-meal. Like, Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. I just, there's something about videos of him peeling off the faces that is just going to stay with me.
I mean, imagine watching that shit.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's
my fucking God, dude.
That's on a VHS. Yeah. Whew. So in this confession, investigators described Andrés as, quote, remorseless. And he described kind of matter-of-factly how he would typically meet his victims at local bars, and a lot of them were like hostesses and bar workers. Mm-hmm. And according to him, this will piss you off, he says he would kill them because they rejected his sexual advances.
Well, I mean, that makes as much sense as peeling someone's face off because they're pretty. Like, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, sure, dude. All of these victims are around like late 20s to early 30s, and you're like 60s to 70s. So, yeah, they might reject your advances, you fucking creep. Also, everyone said he was drunk and inappropriate and like creepy. So,
also, that's just an excuse because he wanted to kill people. And for whatever reason, these motherfuckers always have to have a reason.
Always. Yeah. A little there's fun misogynistic like thing he can tell himself to make himself feel better about the fact that he's just like a cannibal fucking Albert Fish Ed Gein motherfucker, like worse than Ed Gein, actually.
Way worse.
Yeah, way worse.
Ed Gein was terrible and he was a murderer, but like he wasn't nearly like
not prolific.
Yeah, like he was just super people. Weird. Yeah. He was just real weird. So
police have only officially identified the names of, I believe, 7 of his victims publicly. I saw a couple different numbers, different places.
Okay.
Including the 3 I've already mentioned, as well as Norma Jimenez Caron, who disappeared in 2011, and Berenice Sanchez Olvera, who also worked at a bar where he claims that she rejected him, and somehow he got her back to the house where he stabbed her and then cut off her arms.
Whoa.
Sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like that was like in a quick sequence there, like boop.
Yeah.
In his confession, he also described how he would sometimes lure women back to the house with false promises of a job offer. Which
that sounds a little more.
That's more realistic because obviously if they're working at a bar, they're not like wealthy and they're not going to go on the premise of like a sexual thing, right?
Right.
So he has to come up with something. Mm-hmm. They've also ID'd 2 women by their first names only, Aline and Gardenia, which I'm sure was from like that notebook. Mm-hmm. And he's confessed to these, but he doesn't remember, I guess, or hasn't given too much detail. The earliest murder, No. The earliest murder that he confessed to is that of a woman named Norma. He doesn't know her full name, in 2001. So he would have been like 50-ish at the time.
It's so weird when serial killers start that late, because it does happen.
I mean, we don't know that he started that late either. Like,
that's true. Who
knows with this fucking guy?
I read something that I thought was really interesting, actually relating to the case that I'm doing. And one guy was like, serial killers don't necessarily remain, like, keep killing forever. They're like, the way he put it was so fucked up, but like also made a lot of sense. He was like, it's like a hobby. It's like anything else. Like, they get really, really into it. They do it for a while and then maybe they get bored and do something else. And it's like so crazy to think about serial killing in that context, but like, it makes sense, a little bit. Weirdly.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows with this guy? I suspect the scale is probably quite large. If you're capable of this, you do not like, I don't know. I don't feel like you stop.
Well, also, is this the only house he's ever lived in? I mean, they've got to start looking at other places. Like,
yeah. He says that Norma, she worked at a bar. He says that she rejected his advances. He lured her to come back to the house, and he stabbed her. They all kind of have the same story, essentially, at least according to him. And we can put together the rest. Mm-hmm. Face peeling and cannibalism and whatnot.
Jesus.
In March 2022. A year ago, he was found officially guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment.
I didn't know they even did that in Mexico.
Yeah, I don't think it's as obviously not as common as here. So that's breaking it out for him.
Yeah.
Mexican prisons are horrible. So that's where he is. The excavation. I mean, all prisons are horrible, but
right.
Mexican prison and our prison is like objectively worse than like say Norwegian prison.
Yeah, for sure.
Way worse. So I saw there's a show called World's Toughest Prisons on Netflix, and
Yeah.
they covered a couple that were actually cushy just for contrast. And there's one in Denmark no, Iceland that was like insane. It was like the nicest. It was like in a little
let's
apartment.
go to Iceland and commit some crime to like have like a sweet vacation.
Have free housing. Really, you could like come and go. You could have a job. It was like basically like a house arrest kind of thing.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it was really anyway. Still some fucked up shit going on in Iceland. But anyway, or no, sorry, it was Greenland. Greenland.
Oh, Greenland. Okay.
Which is a colony of Denmark. Anyway, I digress. It's weird. So anyway, he was found guilty, and like I said, the excavation of his house actually is continuing as we speak. Kind of like with Leonard Lake and Charles Ng, that excavation took a long time.
Right.
And forensics take a while. So that's the story. In July 2022, Mexican TV produced a TV series called Cannibal, Indignación Total, which means cannibal, total indignation.
Wow.
So I would like to watch that.
I would too.
It's Mexican true crime. But yeah, that's all I could find on that guy. I just couldn't not do it because that was like some of the insanest shit I've ever read in my life.
Yeah, that's fucking horrifying. And like, it's so weird to me that like, I mean, there are definitely like Robert Burdella, like there's definitely that level of serial killer that just kind of exists in America for like a long-term kind of situation where we don't catch them. But I feel like that happens more often in like Mexico, where like the body counts get a lot higher and the length of time is a lot longer. And I just really wonder how the fuck that happens. It's kind of crazy. I don't know how people get away with it. Maybe there's more like, I don't know.
I want to do like serial killers of South America because they have like this insane thing where you can only go to prison for so long, period. And so if you've killed like, there's a couple different famous serial killers, like I covered one of them once. I forget his name.
The Monster of the Andes.
Yeah. Where like you can kill like 400 children and they're like, well, take that, divide it by 15 years. And you're like, no.
Yeah. Because it's not it's the maximum amount allowed, which is fucking crazy to me.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Jesus. Okay. Well, I thought mine was bad, but I feel like this is going to be like refreshing somehow. No, it's going to be horrible. Am I good to go? Can I do my guy?
Yes.
All right. I'm sorry. I feel like that's going to take a while to wash that out of my brain.
Yeah. Let's do it with more murder, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. I am doing the package killer.
Ooh.
This person was dubbed this long before they were ever caught. And in fact, a lot of the research that I did, including some of it that was written in 2022, was written before this person was caught. So pretty interesting. I actually really enjoyed reading kind of contemporary journal, articles about this because it gave me a lot of insight into kind of like the leads that police were taking and all that. I won't go too far into it because I don't want to talk forever, but it was really interesting reading, recent stories, but before this guy was caught. So it was just cool to kind of see it that way. So anyway, this takes place in St. Louis, Missouri in 1990 and 1991. And like I said, he was caught in 2022. So between March 1990 and February 1991, so just under a year's time, at least 4 women were abducted, raped, mutilated, and murdered, with their bodies dumped in various locations around the city. Each body was dumped in a receptacle of some sort. One was found between 2 mattresses that were tied together. 2 were found, I know, so gross and weird. 2 were found, in trash bins, and 1 was found in a homemade wooden box.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the victims. First, we have Robin Meehan. She was born and raised in St. Louis by a single mother. She and her brother grew up very close, and in later years, as teens, they got into the same kind of trouble. When Robin was 16 in 1988, she became pregnant and gave birth to a daughter who she named after her mother. Her mother's name was Sandra. And it really does seem like, despite them growing up kind of a hard knock lifestyle and her mom working a lot and not being around, she was a great mom. But you can only do so much if you live in a bad area and, whatever. It just is.
Yeah.
But Sandra really wants people to know that her daughter was loved and she was important and she was somebody. And you'll see why I have to say all that shit like we always do.
Mm.
Yeah. Robin and her brother both unfortunately got addicted to crack cocaine, which was at epidemic levels around that time in St. Louis. And so they both had a big issue with drugs for a long time, like starting when Robin was like 15 or 16. Um, so very young to be getting into something like that. 2 years after giving birth to her first daughter, Robin again became pregnant, which was a big bummer because, again, she's 18. She is addicted to crack cocaine. She, is living with her mom. And so her mom, Sandra, convinced her to give the baby up for adoption because it just, it was the best chance for the baby to have a good life. Besides having a drug problem, Robin was also a victim of the sex trade, working as a call girl with a friend, and usually
Okay.
having her brother escort her to jobs as a safety measure.
Yeah.
So this was a really good way for her to make money, but sometimes nobody would call. And, when withdrawals set in, it is what it is. And Robin would
Yeah.
go, she would go out onto what was called the South Side Stroll, which was St. Louis's red light district, and she would make money that way, which was much less safe.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. So it's great that she had this kind of thing set up where she had her brother and her friend, and they were kind of like trying to be careful. But it didn't always work out that way. So on the evening of March 22nd, 1990, which is crazy how often we do cases that are like right around the time we're recording them, talking about them.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So just a few weeks after giving up her second daughter, Robin, again desperate for money, went out onto the South Side Stroll. She was never seen alive again after that night. Her friend Faye had gone with her, and they had a rule where if one of them got in a car with a man, they would make that man drive by the other one so that they could get a good look at both him and his car.
Ugh,
But
yeah.
on the night that Robin went missing, the man who picked her up never drove by. So already from the moment she got in the car, something was up.
Yeah, immediately weird.
Yep. On March 26th, police came to her mother's house with news that they had found her body. And they told her that Robin had been raped, beaten, stabbed in the head, although it did not penetrate her skull. She had also been stabbed on her body, including multiple defensive wounds, as well as many postmortem wounds. She had had her hands tied together and had been strangled to death. Her hands were tied together with a particular type of rope or cord that is often used on construction sites. And she also had a man's shirt wrapped around her head. She was found when a man driving down a road in Silex, Missouri, which is just outside of St. Louis, saw two mattresses tied together on the side of the road and thought it looked suspicious. When
Yeah.
police, yeah, a little bit, right?
I would say
Also,
so.
apparently he drove this road every day. And so he was like, those mattresses weren't there yesterday. Like, what the fuck, right?
Right.
So when the police arrived, they found Robin's body between the mattresses, which were tied together really expertly using that same cord.
Okay.
So as you can guess, police didn't do a whole lot to try to solve her murder, mostly focusing on her brother, and even at one point bringing him down to the station and offering him money if he told
Oh
them
my
he did
God.
it.
It was
Mhm.
so stupid.
Yeah. So they think, well, this guy is a drug addict. All he cares about is money and getting his fix. We'll just offer him money and he'll tell us who did it because I'm sure he knows.
Okay.
And later, when interviewed about Robin, Tom was her brother's name. He apparently cried only one time during the interview, and it was when recounting how the police had treated him.
God, this added horribleness on top of an already like traumatic situation.
Really horrible situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was only 18.
Ugh.
Now, this killer was really smart. He would kill women from one county and then dump them in another. And this is what he did with Robin. And this
Yeah.
meant that even when they found a suspect, whose name I do not know, there was so much red tape surrounding who was supposed to arrest him that in the end, nobody did. So it just,
Okay.
yeah, because this was back when police, jurisdictions like didn't work together. And so it was a big fucking clusterfuck trying to figure out who's supposed to do their job, right? So just over 6 months later, a Jane Doe was found in early October by a jogger in Maryland Heights, another kind of suburb of St. Louis. He actually smelled something so bad that he alerted two municipal workers to the smell. And they opened a 35-gallon trash can and found inside a woman's badly decomposed body. And in fact, this body was so far gone that it wasn't immediately possible to even tell if it was a woman, but it was later determined that she was female between 18 and 40, and was wearing a turquoise sweater. This woman had also been strangled to death, and her hands were tied with the same kind of cord. And she also had a man's shirt tied around her head.
Ugh, it's gross. It's giving me the shivers.
Yes. Now, we don't know how many bruises or cuts she had because her body was fairly pretty decomposed at this point. But they could tell she'd been strangled, and they did have that information. Now, this body would not be identified until after a third body was found. So I'm going to come back to this woman in the trash can, but first I'm going to talk about the third body. Now, this third body was found February 17th, 1991. So quite a while after this Jane Doe was found, because the Jane Doe was found in October, right?
Yeah.
So they're waiting, trying to figure out who Jane Doe is. They already have Robin's body, and now they have a third. This body was found in O'Fallon, Missouri. So again, a different county. And it was found in a homemade wooden box. Again, like the Jane Doe, this body was already very decomposed when found, but had a fast food uniform on, as well as a Ticor title branded beanie, which was later found to be only one of 100 made.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, or one of
limited edition.
Yes, very limited edition. This body was pretty quickly identified as Sandy Little, who had been missing since early September. So she was missing before Jane Doe was found, and then she was found before Jane Doe was identified.
Okay.
Sandy Little grew up in a horrible home with a complete piece of shit mother who may or may not have had like mental issues. She had a stepfather who was a good man and did what he could for her, but he died in 1980, leaving Sandy and her siblings alone with their mother, who quickly lost custody of all 5 of them. So, pretty bad.
Wow. Yeah.
They all moved up with a family in Alaska in a foster situation, but Sandy couldn't deal and started acting out and got sent back to Missouri.
Yeah.
Eventually, all of the kids ended up back in Missouri with their mother, who was charging Sandy. Sandy was like maybe 18 at this point. She was charging her a nightly rent of $20 for any night she slept at the house.
Okay.
So, yeah, this woman's a piece of shit.
Wow.
Quite often, Sandy would go stay with her older stepsister, Barb, who lived on her own nearby. Barb would let her stay unless she was using drugs, which sadly she was doing often, because she was also addicted to crack cocaine, and she was also a victim of the sex trade, needing money for rent as well as drugs.
Yeah.
At 20, Sandy became pregnant and actually moved in with the father. She got a job at a fast food place and tried to get sober. She had a really hard time with kicking the drugs, but was able to raise her son and hold down a job. She was still going on the Southern stroll for extra money here and there. And one night near the end of August 1990, her stepsister Barb saw her on the stroll and said that Sandy told her she was there because she needed money for formula. She was never seen alive again. And it took 5 months for her body to be found.
Ugh, God. It's so sad.
She's terrible. Even with the 1 in 100 hat, even with testing for DNA, they had no leads. And a lot of this, again, was due to different jurisdictions and counties involved, which again was not likely an accident on the killer's part. So 3 weeks after Sandy's body was found, Jane Doe was finally identified as 27-year-old Brenda Pruitt, who had no record of sex work, but did have friends in the area near the stroll. She had gone missing in May of 1990 and was reported missing on May 9th by her family. There's not a lot known about her because her family is basically like, fuck off, we want nothing to do with the media, we want nothing to do with any of this. And the most recent thing I read is that a lot of them have actually died. So we don't know a lot about her. But what I do know is that this murderer, this serial killer, held these women for some period of time and probably had 2 of them in his house at a time. One of the 2 was likely dead, so he would have like a body and a live woman together in the basement of his house. But so these women were held. They weren't like, murdered the same night they were abducted. Like Robin was. Robin probably was because she was found 4 days later, but the rest of these women were found months and months later, but they were not, their time of death does not coincide with when they went missing.
So they were held captive.
They were held captive.
Ugh, it's horrible.
Yeah. It's thought that Sandy Little specifically was kept for some time. And we don't know how many other women But again, the amount of decomp, shows that they were prisoners, which is fucking terrifying. We don't have evidence as to what happened, but you can it wasn't a great time, it's fucking horrifying. So now we have these 3 women, but there's actually one more that for a long time wasn't widely considered a victim of the same killer, but I don't really understand why. So on June 11th, 1990, so right in the thick of all of this, 40-year-old Donna Rietmeyer's nude body was found inside a household-style trash bin within the actual city limits of St. Louis. So like somebody's like, when you roll your trash cans out to the street.
Yeah.
Her body was in one of those.
Ugh, God.
Yeah. I'm unsure if there were other elements to tie her murder to the others, but the trash bin is definitely a sign. Now, over the years, police had a few suspects, including one who's, again, like I couldn't find his name, but the police mentioned him, and then other people, like family members of the victims, also mentioned him. Like, this is the guy who did it. So there was a very, very strong suspect who was never arrested, but it was not the person who did this. The person who did this was a man named Gary Muehlberg, and he was never, ever, ever once suspected of murder. After a few years, mostly due to the women mostly being, considered not worthy of justice because they were doing drugs or were in the sex trade.
Yeah, seen as less than human.
They were less than human, so the stories pretty quickly went out of the news and life went on. Then, in 2008, 18 years after the first murder, an O'Fallon police detective reopened the investigations, sent items in for DNA testing, and this included, and this is going to blow your fucking mind that it took until 2008 for this, it included a condom filled with semen that was found with one of the victims. Like,
Ew.
Yeah, disgusting, but also, like, why did it take so long to test it? Like,
yeah. Oh, that should be tested immediately. Also, how fucking stupid.
Yeah. I mean, 1990, I don't know what their DNA technology was, but the moment that was the type of thing that could be tested, it fucking should have been.
Yeah.
It took another 14 years to complete this for some ridiculous fucking reason. But finally, in 2022, a match came back to a man named Gary Muehlberg, who I already mentioned.
Yeah.
Now, Gary is now a 74-year-old man who, in 2022, was already serving a life sentence for the murder of a man he killed when the man came to his house to buy a Cadillac. This man, Kenneth Doc Atchison, had told multiple people where he was going and that he was a little wary of meeting with Gary. He was wary of Gary. I had to, I'm sorry. I wrote that down. I was like, wary Gary.
You gotta do it.
After the man was reported missing, police searched Gary's house and found him in the basement in a homemade box. In a homemade box.
Wait, he's in a box?
He's in a homemade box, just like one of the girls that died, and they didn't put 2 and 2 together. This murder took place in 1993, so only 2 years after these women are being found, including one in a homemade box.
Wow.
Yes. So obviously, Gary also had not really slowed down on his murdering, so there definitely could be more victims. And this guy is a piece of shit, and let's talk about it. In 1972, Gary was charged with rape, kidnapping, and aggravated robbery after breaking into the house of an 18-year-old girl and holding her at knife point while he raped her. He was, of course, acquitted of her rape, because, of course, he fucking was. But he was given a mental competency hearing for the robbery. So, whatever, I don't know. Soon after, like 1 year after, because why not? He's gonna get away with it. He attacked a 14-year-old girl who was babysitting even younger children and was absolutely about to drown her in the bathtub, which he had filled with water. But a car drove by the house and scared him, so he fled. For this attack, on the heels of his rape, robbery, and all that other shit, this got him 5 years in prison. 5 years.
Wow. Okay. That's chill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
His wife, because yes, he was married,
Oh my God.
on his behalf, but divorced him that same year, leaving with their young son, who he never tried to reconnect with, by the way.
I mean, it's for the best, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not the best dad to have.
No. He got out of prison. I don't even know if he did the full 5 years. He remarried in 1980. He had 2 more children and went around working shitty jobs that he hated and couldn't keep. These 2 divorced in 1986, and again, he didn't really give a shit about the kids, wasn't really around. He was known in the area where he lived, which is in St. Louis, as a narcissistic liar with an inflated sense of self, who didn't have any friends, but often had women around, either until they got to know him or because he was paying them. This is a big part of why Doc told people where he was going when he went to buy the car, which is a big part of how he got caught and stopped murdering.
Gotcha.
Sadly, there was a fire in this basement in 1991. So the same basement where Doc was found was where these women were kept, but it burned in 1991, which likely destroyed a ton of viable evidence.
Oh my God, so frustrating.
Yeah. So we know there weren't any murders after 1993 because he was arrested pretty much like the day after he killed that guy. But we don't know how many murders there were between the bodies that were found in 1991 and this man in 1993. But it feels to me like if he's on this much of a tear, he didn't fucking stop. Or maybe he did, and then he lit that fire to get rid of the evidence and then just randomly killed this other dude. It's really hard to say. What we can say though is that there were a ton of fucking theories. They were all really stupid. This is a big part of like where that what that guy said about like a serial killer just having a hobby. Like they were like he's probably still out there and just stopped killing people. And it's like no, he's in prison for murder and y'all are so fucking stupid. You can't put two and two together. They literally had his DNA in the databases for God knows how long and just never fucking tested it. Never tested the evidence they had. They could have cracked this case fucking 15 years ago, you know?
It's so dumb. Yeah, and it's just because of who the victims were too. You just know it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So finally, when they did test the DNA, they confronted Gary with the evidence, and he just straight up confessed. And not only did he confess to the three police knew were connected, but he did confess to that fourth murder of Donna Reitmeyer. Now, he never admitted to a fifth one, but is strongly believed that he also killed Sandy Kane back in 1990, just before he killed Sandy Little. Sandy Kane's body was found in May of 1991, even though she had gone missing just before Sandy Little. And Sandy, this is really confusing, were actually friends. And Sandy Little had warned Sandy Kane not to get into a car with a man who drove a station wagon. And it's believed that Gary drove this station wagon. Now, I don't know for sure if he did, but that was kind of the thing, which I also find interesting because if she's telling her friend not to get in, then how did she end up with Gary? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So maybe it was misinformation. I don't know. Either way, on March 6th of this year, he was given another life sentence for the murder of Sandy Little.
So recent.
And on March 21st, so like a week ago, he pled guilty to the murders of Brenda Pruitt and Donna Reitmeyer. He also at some point admitted to killing another Jane Doe, but we don't even know who that is, so there's no charges. So we've got 5, maybe 6, plus the man. We have like a torture chamber in the basement that burned down. I mean, this guy was fucking gnarly. And the only reason I think he stopped is because he was already in prison for a life sentence. Otherwise, like, who knows how long he would have done this and got away with it because nobody gives a shit, you know?
Yeah.
So he apologized and said it was a dark period in his life. And I'm like, dude, come on. You're in prison for life. Like, your whole life is a dark period. Like, you're just the worst. But he did seem to pretend to have some remorse, but it was like serial killer style remorse. So it kind of felt hollow when I was reading.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I guess I got caught for being a serial killer. Like,
yeah, I would have stopped on my own even if I wasn't put in prison for the rest of my life. Like, okay, dude, I'm sure that's true.
Sure, okay. Like, what do you want? A fucking medal? Do you want a cookie for like for that? Like, so shallow,
so fucking stupid. Anyway. So that's the story of that motherfucker. I'd really like to know, and in a way I'm kind of glad I don't. I'm sure the man who was the suspect was really happy, but I'd love to know the name of the guy they suspected. They actually said that he got so used to the police coming by that he'd like meet them at the door. Like anytime a body was discovered, he'd be like, "Come on in, like it's not me." So apparently, whoever the guy was that they suspected, there had to be a reason, you know, because they were like all over him. But hopefully that man is still alive and very happy to be exonerated because Gary did it. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, what an asshole. You should be wary of this, Gary. I'm just going to do it again.
Yeah. Gary, you fucking dick. So yeah, that was interesting and I really like that I got some closure on some of these cases just a week ago. If we'd done this like a couple weeks earlier, I wouldn't know if he was convicted or what happened. So the case is moving along and he's going to be in prison forever.
And you kind of did like both of your cases had like cold case type of vibes.
Yeah, which I really, yeah, and I think I said that I wanted to do cases like that because I wanted to have more information. Like I like that I get to have like stories about the victims and kind of know where they come from and what happened to them. You know, it makes it kind of sad, but it's also interesting to kind of see the types of victims that he looked for and the way the police handled it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there they are. I just realized like I have no idea what we're doing for next week.
Oh yeah. Didn't know you picked.
What was it? Oh, I did. I just forgot. Yeah.
Spring break murders.
Spring break murders, because it's spring break.
Exactly. Lots of people are on vacation that I know, and I'm jealous and sad, and I can't afford a vacation. So,
dude, I can't either, and I hate it. But I do love the fact that I'm getting to and from work in like half the time I normally do. So it's like giving me life to have good traffic. Okay. In LA, it's the little things like good traffic, and apparently also now good weather. When we have good weather, I'm really grateful, because apparently that's not a thing here anymore. So,
we're getting our sunshine back. Yeah.
Not today, dude. It was cold as fuck. Anyway, we're gonna do spring break
in a few days. Yeah, spring break.
Yeah, so these are pretty fucked up. And we've done it before, or some variation of it, but I don't think we've done any of these cases that I see.
No, we did like vacation murders, but not spring break.
Is that what it was? Okay. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, we had a lot of vacation ones.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just we're living vicariously, but also in like a really twisted, fucked up way. I don't know. We talk about vacation a lot, so. Anyway, so guys, that's what we'll do. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Sorry if the audio is a touch choppy. I have AT&T internet, and if you know, you know, and if you don't know, it's garbage. So apologies if the sound is a little choppy. I think it'll mostly be okay. But thanks for sticking with us and tuning in. We love you. And anything else, Diva?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, until the next one,
stay
off our
list.